Hello, my name is Austin Green. In this presentation, I will be discussing the United States Supreme Court case Lemon v. Kurtzman in 1971. Alton Lemon was an appellant in the case and was a parent of a student enrolled in the Pennsylvania public school system. Alton Lemon would go on to receive the First Amendment Hero Award and would become the first African-American head of the Philadelphia Ethical Society. Lemon was also a United States Army veteran and lifetime member of the American Civil Liberties Union and the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. On the other side of the case, David Kurtzman was the superintendent of public instruction of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Also named as an appellee of the case was Grace Sloan as state treasurer of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, St. Anthony's Roman Catholic Church School, and Archbishop Wood's Girls High School, among others. Facts about the case. From the Civil Rights Movement to the Vietnam War, the 1960s and 1970s brought forth some of the most controversial times in American history. Adding to this story of conflict, in 1968 and 1969, Pennsylvania and Rhode Island adopted statutes that granted funding for non-secular, non-public education. The term secular here refers to the absence of religious or spiritual motive. The Pennsylvania statute provided funding for non-public elementary and secondary school teachers' salaries, textbooks, and instructional materials for secular subjects. The Rhode Island statute provided state financial support that came way of 15% of teachers' yearly salaries. The appellants in the Pennsylvania case represented citizens and taxpayers who believed the statute violated the separation of church and state as granted by the First Amendment. The appellants did not feel it was appropriate for state tax dollars to be put towards non-secular subject matter and that it was in direct violation of their First Amendment rights. In the Rhode Island case, the appellants argued that the statute in question goes against the Establishment Clause as described in the First Amendment. Once again, the appellants deemed it inappropriate that their tax dollars be used in non-secular schools. The question the Supreme Court faced in this case was, do statutes that provide funding for non-public, non-secular schools violate the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment? In other words, is federal funding of religious, private schools unconstitutional, or is the parochial school system an example of free exercise? The First Amendment of the United States Constitution is broken into two clauses, the first of which, the Establishment Clause, and the second is known as the Free Speech Clause. The amendment reads, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. The United States Supreme Court ruled in favor of Lemon and the appellants in an 8-0 decision for the Pennsylvania case and an 8-1 decision for the Rhode Island case. Chief Justice Warren Burger wrote the opinion. He stated, the statute must have a secular legislative purpose, known as the purpose prong. Its principal or primary effect must be one that neither promotes nor inhibits religion, known as the effect prong, and it must not foster excessive entanglement between the government and religion, known as the entanglement prong. This opinion would go on to be known as the Lemon test, which federal courts still use today when deciding upon Establishment Clause cases in education. If any of these prongs were to be violated, the government's action is therefore deemed unconstitutional under the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. According to the majority opinion, the parochial school system is an integral part of the religious mission of the Catholic Church, and therefore the statute fostered excessive entanglement between the state and the religion, thus violating the Establishment Clause. The sole dissent was written by Justice Byron White. In his dissent, Justice White wrote that the majority opinion goes too far and in restricting the use of state funds in non-secular schools creates an obstacle to the use of public funds in secular education. White believed too much interference with the non-public school system was unconstitutional. So what did this mean for non-secular schools? Courts have since used the Lemon Test to decide whether state statutes create an unnecessary entanglement between government and religion. Since this decision, it has been increasingly more difficult for non-public, non-secular schools to afford quality materials for their students, as well as quality pay for their teachers. In order to do this, these schools have begun to increase the cost of tuition for each student. This has led to a decline in the number of students attending non-public schools. Sometimes, however, the Lemon Test can benefit non-public or non-secular schools. In the Supreme Court case Mueller versus Allen of 1983, a Minnesota law allowed for taxpayers to deduct from their state income tax expenses incurred in providing tuition, textbooks, and transportation for their children's elementary or secondary education. Included among these taxpayers are those who send their children to non-secular schools. The appellants in this case felt that parents who chose to send their children to non-public, non-secular schools should not qualify for the tax deductions because the debt they were incurring due to tuition and textbooks was by choice. The court used the Lemon Test and decided that the statute did not violate the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment because the statute met all three prongs of the Lemon Test. Regarding the first prong, the court observed that the tax deduction had the secular purpose of ensuring that the state is well educated, as well as the continued financial health of private schools, both secular and non-secular. Regarding the effect prong, the court decided it did not have the primary effect of advancing the secular aims of non-public schools because it was one of the many tax deductions permitted under Minnesota laws. Also, the deduction was permitted to all parents. Regarding the entanglement prong, the court did not find a violation as the only possible entanglement might arise while determining what textbooks could be deducted. Thank you for listening to my presentation.